Hey everybody, welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and another episode of the Indie Show. Tonight we are talking Descender Volume 6, the final volume. We're going to be talking about it and probably the whole series. And with me, as always, is my Descender panel. First up, we got Comic Man Andy. What's going on, man?
What's up, JP? How's it going, man? Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you here and looking forward to this discussion. And then we also got this guy, John. What's going on, Johnny?
Just finished my last bite of dinner. Not going to eat on the show.
He shoved it down between the X-Men show and this.
I did what I could.
You know. And our last member of our crew, Justin, what is going on? No Good Comics.
Hey. That was a great face, John, when you really played into it.
He knows that's what I'm going to do.
I know exactly how he's going to introduce me every time.
Great. So great.
I should have just held this up and said, give Tony his spot.
I love that picture.
Give Tony the love.
So good.
The other night when we were on D&D and who had the King John shirt on? Daymares? And he would stand up. That was hilarious. All right. So, we are talking Descender Volume 6. So, I know Justin and I were the only two who hadn't finished it before when we did our last show. Is that correct? You guys had? Yeah. So, Justin, we'll start with you then. Overall impression of how they wrapped this up of Volume 6. What did you think?
So I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I was at a loss for words when you guys asked before where I thought this was going. And I think that kind of worked out because I wouldn't have been able to call this even if I tried. And but I'm happy with it. I'm happy with how it ended. And I know we'll get into things, but I really enjoyed it. And I just like how it was broken up into a couple different stories, which I'm sure we'll elaborate on. But overall, I thought it was well done. Lemire did an awesome job. And by the way, I wanted to show this because I was going to say, this is how much I loved it. I just bought this.
We're giving the full. Very nice.
That was you that won that one that I was watching, huh?
Yeah, well, I was gonna reach out to you about that because I remember you saying you were thinking about buying it.
I thought about bidding on it and I let it go.
I was like, oh no, this story is just so good. I'm scooping this. I don't care what I got to pay for it. So it was really cool. But yeah, so that speaks for itself. Very happy to have that.
Yeah. Hey, Comics for Cheap. Thanks for hanging out. All right, John, you were the one that mentioned that this was somewhat controversial. How did you think? What are your general impressions of how they wrapped this up?
So now I've read this final trade, I think 3 times. And the first time through, I honestly was so flabbergasted that I basically went through and reread the final trade again. Because I think it falls into that category of like, it's not what I expected.
Right.
So then I have to ask myself, is what I expected unreasonable, or is this more fitting to their story? And the more I've read it, the more I feel like they definitely built and captured on all the themes that they had going here. And so for me, like, I was not disappointed. It's not the best trade in the set, but that's because some of these trades are some of the best I've ever read. So it's not fair to make that comparison, but is it a fitting end? I totally agree. Yes, it is.
What about you, Andy? What were your impressions when you got to the end here, just in general? We'll dig into the details later, but
this is my third time reading the finale here, and for the third time, I'm left speechless. I agree with John. It's not the best trade out of the series, but they wrapped it up very well, and they did an amazing job. Hook, line, and sinker. I'm like just right there. I'm about ready to pull up Ascender to start reading that. I can't put this down, man. They really sink their hooks into you.
Yeah, I will say, like, before we go any further, just if anybody has any questions about what I think of, I've actually made another order, and I have Ascender Volumes 1 and 2 on the way. So,
nice.
So I think there's only 3 volumes out at this point, but yeah, but I have 1 and 2 coming my way already. So yeah, I did not expect this is where it was going to go. Even like as you're reading it, it kind of sets up that no, this is where it's headed, that it's not headed toward the ending I think most people would want, or that it's not headed toward the happy ending necessarily, in any way, shape, or form. And I kept thinking, I thought, oh, at the last minute, maybe they're gonna like give you kind of the swerve, and then I thought the ending fit the story. Like this is a story they were telling, and I thought it was super appropriate. It was super well done. Hit all the right feelings and notes, at least for me. So yeah, I think at this point we could start digging into the full spoilers for anybody that's watching. Not that we have that many watching, but that's okay. So I know if you haven't finished this, don't watch and go read and then go back and watch and see our discussion. But so where do you guys want to start? Andy, I'll give you the first thing. Where do you want to start on some of this?
I mean, we might as well start right at the beginning. They open up chapter 1 with 4,000 years in the past.
Yeah.
Which is like, okay, the last time that we had gone that far back was book 3, when they found the original.
Yeah, and that wasn't even that far back. We went in the past, but not that far.
That wasn't that far. Then we go 4,000 years in the past. It's like the first time I read this, I'm like, okay, what's going on here? And it paints a beautiful story of somebody interested in pushing the boundaries, seeing what's out there, and leaving behind and making sacrifices. And boy, do those sacrifices pay off for them.
Yeah.
For humanity, so to speak, if you will, in this environment. And I'm going to ramble for a minute here. I was shocked, though, at this point where he goes and he comes back and his child isn't much older. His wife, he literally was only gone for a few months. I was thinking this was going to be one of those interstellar type aspects where he comes back and his son is as old as his grandfather now and all this other crazy stuff. I was kind of expecting that plot twist at first, but it was heartwarming that he was back and didn't miss out on his child's childhood and all this other stuff, and his wife was still there. And then they do a little bit of a jump, but I'll leave that for somebody else to carry on with.
So what do we think about, I want to spend a little bit of time on there, because we do spend basically the first 2 chapters, for the most part, are this sudden backstory that we didn't know we were going to get of the ancient robot that we've seen introduced before, how he came to be, and where he came from.
That's an important point.
And, it was very interesting, and we get... Like, at this point is when you really understand, like, start to see where the machines are coming from in all of this. Not the machines we've met, but these harvesters and this higher level of machines that really, like, that Tim has been connecting to, but we haven't really understand what's been going on the whole time. And we finally get an understanding of what it is he's been connecting to, and what the harvesters, why they've done what they're done. So what do we think about this backstory, Justin? What do you think about what's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, I really liked that it kind of gave us a glimpse into the harvester's world. I mean, we got to fully understand, like, even the details of when the doctor's talking about, I guess he's a doctor or a scientist, when he talks about like the big harvesters, how they're like, he thought that they were just transport ships. They had a lot of room in them, and he explains these details, but he said ultimately they do way more than that, including a lot of their weaponry, which he also talks about how that's basically the only robot that has any sort of weaponry that he's witnessed, and that everyone else in this planet that he's in has their own job, and they're built a certain way to do their own thing. And from what he's gathered, they're doing it for data. Having him and his team member there. So I just thought it was a really cool glimpse into their world, and to at least get kind of an understanding into what these things are and how they operate or why. And, are they God? Are they, did they create man? Like, he starts to question himself, like, who came first? Now I'm a little confused with, what I've been taught this whole time, or what what my people believe. So it was interesting to see the eye opening for him.
What about you, John? What do you think of this part of the story?
I will say my favorite movies, shows, books, or whatever, the writers of those products really know how to layer a flashback right. And this is a great example of that for me. I feel like all through these trades, we've been seeing flashbacks doled out at just the right moments and just the right amounts. So just like in something like Battlestar Galactica, the show, or I'm gonna say Lost. I'm a big fan. They drop these flashbacks that are game changers for character or plot or universe. In this case, this is the one that you get in the final season of a great show that's going to recontextualize what you're watching. And these two issues basically explain to us, number one, what the harvesters are and what they're trying to accomplish with a harvest. And two, it basically lets us understand why they're doing it, because we see you could call it the Adam and Eve, the original sin, right? The original sin of man and AI, which is treating them as less than you are, treating them like a servant or a slave. The idea that you couldn't see this as life, but instead you see it as your servant.
Yeah, and it's very interesting for me. Like, I'm glad you brought that up, because like this doctor, this professor who goes out and studies these things, he talks about, like, he has this during the middle while he's there, he has this whole question of faith. Did they make us? Or were they here first? And yet he doesn't really learn anything from that. All he learns is, how can I use these tools? And so when he comes back, he makes, to the machine's point of view, this mistake, is he just uses them, what he's learned from them, as tools, and in their view, slaves. Like, he's not treating the machines as equal. You see all the machines talk to him. They refer to him as master when he comes back. Like, and ultimately he creates the ancient robot that we see, like, which is the most advanced one, but it's instantly connected to the home,
the motherland.
For lack of a better term, robots. I don't know. They're not really robots. They're just advanced machines that are beyond our comprehension. And and you basically see them come and say, yeah, no, we're gonna punish you. Failed. We brought you here to see, sort of as a test, and that he failed. And they basically destroy that world. And when it happens, like, you see them and they basically destroy the one, and they're just like, they kind of give them, in the second round of harvesters, what you realize was they'd failed again, because they were using robots again. It's why they came the last time. Mm-hmm. So any other, like, I just thought, I agree with John. It was, like, really well done. When I first started reading it, I'm like, wait, what? Why are we getting this now? And then it was like, oh, okay. What they were setting up and really giving you it was really well timed, or really well handled for.
Well, because it could have been a train wreck. Let's be honest. Doing an exposition dump using 2 of your final 6 issues of your comic to basically give backstory that explains everything in a way is a bold move that could easily blow up in your face.
Yeah, and the fact that it's 2, like, when I saw it, when I first seen the first one, I was like, okay, we're getting a backstory issue. And then it kept going. It really was paced, not slowly, but it was paced, like, it wasn't the breakneck pace of the flashback that you expected. It was paced right to tell the full story. Mm-hmm. Like, they set up who this guy is, so you understood who this guy was, what he was trying to accomplish. You get his meeting with this advanced AI. You get him going back and starting to use it and see how he's using what he learned before, and then you get their reaction. And, like, it takes 2 issues, because it takes 2 issues, and it works really well for me. We have Warlord and Schultz in the house. What's going on? Sorry, Andy, go ahead.
Did you guys notice the seamless melding of flashbacks? What was the term John used? Contextualized?
Yeah, it recontextualizes, right? Because you have it in a certain context, but then the context totally changes, right?
Well, I loved the fact that when his life ends, he's running away from the harvesters, destroying that world, and he has the AI with him. And they dive into that temple, and then he's crushed there. And then the next flashback, the flashback that we read earlier, picks up there, but 3,800 years later, 3,600 years later, something like that. So they seamlessly weld those flashbacks together epically well, in my opinion.
Well, and it explains, you get this, because one of the weird things was when Quan and the other doctor that we meet here finally, like, truly meet, that he was his teacher, like, they found this really advanced robot in this ancient temple, and it was like, why was it there? What made sense? And you see, the old guy tries to escape by running back to the temple of the religion that he kind of like pushed aside for all these machines, and he'd walked away from.
And that AI just decided to lay down on that pedestal and hibernate for that entire time until they dig down there and find him all those years later. And that was a very, very, very well planned out, well thought out way to seamlessly meld those flashbacks together.
Yeah.
That I was really impressed with.
All right. So anything else on the flashback before we move into the rest of this finale? Because it moves pretty quick once you get past that.
I just wanted to point out too the idea of the professor, how he gets consumed with his work to the point where, essentially he's leaving this, he's taking on this journey to help better his people and his family, and he's hoping to see his son when he gets back. This whole time his narration is to his son, who he misses and keeps saying that I'm coming back and here's what's happening. When he does get back and 10 years go by, he like dismisses his son, and his son wants to, he wants him to go with him wherever it was. I can't remember at the moment, but he was basically like, get him, someone take care of him and, have him do his homework or whatever he has to do. I got work I have to do, and then also just this, not evilness, but just this harshness of like, when the one guy comes up to him and he's like, hey, what, and I don't remember all the details, but he's basically saying like, we're having an issue here with some of the machines, like they can't handle this. And he's basically like, make them do it. Like they can do it. They're machines, make them do it, and he's like, just so cold at that time. And really it's for this, this big picture thing. I just thought it was interesting to see him really get consumed the way he did. And I guess it does in a way, as you like, history repeats itself. It happened again, now in the more current time, very similarly. So I just thought that was interesting kind of character change within him.
It was very Mad Professor-like, right?
Yeah.
He gets all consumed by this goal or his studies and what he wants to do with it, that he gets so disconnected with what he's creating, and then he gets disconnected with what he had created, his own son.
Yeah.
And that disconnect even starts when they blast off into space and he departs and starts to go on this journey. And it's, as a father, that's a very scary disconnection to watch happen, even in a story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because he comes back and he's obsessed with using what he learned to better his people, which could be a very noble goal, but he totally loses his way. And he loses, when he says he sets out, he's talking about it being for his son and everything else and trying to
right.
And then in the end, he's like, he totally cuts himself off and he ends up leading to the destruction of his entire world. And it's just, which we're going to see more of as we go into the rest of this. So we had Fridgies come in here. DMP, what's going on? Downright Nerdy, sounds like they're still moving when they were on something earlier. So hopefully they'll get settled and back on soon. All right. So from there we move in. Where do you guys want to go from here? The last 4 issues move really rapidly because we see Tulsa and Tim 21 get this background from the ancient robot. And we see all the other kind of pieces moving on the board. We see the Hardwire and the GNC. I think I'm messing that up, but getting ready to fight. We see the Nishians are coming, and everyone's trying to get Tim to this harvester they've built so that they can use it to try to wipe out everything else. And everyone's trying to use Tim in this, basically. What do you guys think of the rest of this? Where do you guys want to go? What parts stood out to you in this finale? Let's start with John this time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that you can boil this down. That's the hard part about it, because you have a perfectly set up climax here. You have all these factions that have kind of been separated out, and maybe we've dealt with this one or maybe these two, but now it's like everybody's, you have the robot revolutionaries, you have the militaristic government, you have the aliens, you have the original harvester robots, you have our characters caught in the middle, and all these sort of factions coming together on this one planet. I think it's the sign of a really good execution when you're seeing all the little threads weave together into this climactic moment when all the marbles are on the line, right? Everything's happening here. And our characters being those linchpins at the center that are going to make all the difference and connect to all the big choices. And you're reuniting characters that have been separated in some cases for the entire run. I mean, you talk about the thumbnail, and Andy was like, I can't believe JP put the most powerful moment on the freaking thumbnail. What's wrong with you? But like that, those two characters have not been connected since they were children. And in the run of this story, we haven't really seen them together. And all these characters come together. I think it's what you expect from a really well done finale. You want all the characters to be involved. You want all of them to have big moments and big decisions to make. Mm-hmm. And I think you get that. And again, I get the drawbacks for me is there's so many characters and so many of those that you want more, right? I wanted more time with Driller, or I wanted more time with whatever. But that's on rereads, I keep telling myself, well, then they just nailed it. If I want more of what they're doing,
So I think I'm going to change the way I was going to go about this just based on what John said, because it all ties together. I think the way I want to do this is I want to talk about a couple of the arcs we see with these characters in this part. And I'm just going to kind of pick some characters and kind of go through them individually. And I want to start with, because she's not necessarily the most important, but I think we see a lot of growth from Telsa in this issue or in this trade. We'll save Andy and Tim and some of the others for later, but we'll start with her, because at the beginning of this, she is still it's clear she's grown to care about Tim, in a way, through this. But at the beginning, she's still I'm going to do my job. I'm a soldier. She's sort of still proving herself. And they even talk, they even call her on it a couple of times. People call her on it really throughout the series. Dr. Kwan calls her on it a bunch of times. People call it that she's just trying to impress Daddy instead of doing what she thinks is right. And so what do you guys think about her path in this? And just to set this up, is I think this, for her, this cover is so good to what's going on in this trade for her. And I'm going to make myself let's do this one. Yeah.
I love that art.
Yeah. I saw that, and then having read that, I just kept going back to that page. I was like, oh.
Well, and we mentioned the first two issues being these flashback issues, but she's on the cover of the second one. Yeah. And for me, it's I'm not to keep bringing biblical references in, but there's this fruit of knowledge going on here. And she's literally standing under a tree full of little robot knowledge all around her. And we're learning about the original sin of man and robots. And then your cover, the one you just showed, JP, feels like the repercussions of that.
Yeah.
Now she's learned so much, she can't possibly go back to be Daddy's little soldier anymore.
She wants to, but she can't. When she finally has to make a choice, she can't just do. She can't do it anymore.
No.
And I think that's a great. I hadn't really thought about it from that perspective, but that is great. And we get, see after the the doctor, the old professor, and the old robot tell her that, you need to take Tim to, because they're coming. If you want to stop them, like, we need to do this. And she's like, no, I'm taking him back. And ultimately that choice leads to bad things, but she tries to undo later when she gets, so she takes him to this harvester that her father has built, which when you see the real one, it's kind of a joke. And when she confronted with the final choice of what she has to do, she chooses to let Tim go. Like, instead of trying to force him into this machine and use it as a weapon. Which leads to this, like, really good panel. Like, these 2 pages for her of when they're fighting their way, trying to get Tim to this thing, and like her dad's yelling at her, and I just think it's a really good, like, given everything her character has gone through, I just think it's a really good wrap up to her. I realize it's not the final scene she's in, but it kind of wraps up her arc in a way that I thought was really well done. Andy or Justin, you guys, any comments about that part? I feel like I talked through all of that.
Justin, go first and then come back to me, because what I'd like to say would be a pretty good segue, I think.
Okay.
I mean, I think a lot of great points, JP and John. Just seeing her struggle, this character that we've grown to know now, being as tough as she is, even in those last few panels, as you were showing there, before she actually makes that exchange and that decision to let Tim go. Even then, like, she's trying to be this person that she really isn't anymore, because she learned like what's the right thing to do. And yet she's still trying to, like you said, be daddy's soldier. And I thought it was interesting that even seeing her kind of break down, and calling out daddy, to him while he was on the screen or whatever, just how she's struggling with that, because she's just like, I want to do what I'm supposed to do for you, but I know that that's just not the right thing, and ultimately makes the decision, as you said, to just go ahead and let Tim go. So I mean, ultimately, just it was powerful to see her character grow, just within some of those last few panels, her struggling to try to keep that coldness and that I guess professionalism, or whatever you want to call it, and then slowly switch it over.
Okay, nice. I personally felt like this was probably one of the more important arcs that we see finish, even though in the first read through I didn't think so, and I just didn't read into it far enough. We're witnessing an individual here that's struggling with an old way of holding on to an old way of life, or what she used to know, and struggling with transitioning into a new way of life, and what she feels is right and what is perceived as right. And the reason why that is I feel like part 3 or issue 3 of this book is really the grand opening of the symphony, delivering the final blow, where they have the readers visualizing and seeing the blurring of the line between man and machine. Right. They add a lot of humanity to some characters, and they add a lot of non-humanity to other characters throughout this, but one individual doesn't physically change at all, and it's her. But on the inside, she's going through a massive amount of change. So it's kind of like there's a lot more layers to that character development that really show through on the first read for me. And the second and the third, I'm like, okay, I'm really starting to pick this up. And I think that part 3 with her arc in here is really kind of the symphony starting its last final hurrah with that blurring of the line between man and machine, and that epic universal of chicken or the egg, or who built what, or what came first. It, like, really making the reader question what is the norm, right?
Yeah.
I gotta go. Now I want to go back and read it again.
I keep flipping through parts of it. So.
I thought JP fell asleep. He was just like,
well, I mean, case in point is that really big panel with the doctor standing there from the waist down. He's now essentially a half machine.
Yeah.
His left arm's been replaced, and everything from the waist down has been replaced.
Oh, yeah, Dr. Kwan. Yeah.
Yep.
I like how she makes him stay with her.
Yeah, when she lets him go, like he doesn't get to go. He has to stay at home.
He's like, I was gonna go with them.
So, well, do we want to talk about Dr. Kwan a little bit? Because he's sort of, in many ways, he makes the same mistake. He's sort of the bad guy of this, in many ways, of this whole tale. He's the guy that originally his decision to steal the ancient robots thing caused the harvesters to come the first time, and many of his decisions since, like, lead to what happens here. I mean, he makes so many mistakes, not all of them with good intentions, much like that original guy. Well, most of them with somewhat good intentions, I guess, but like, but he becomes. I just think it's a very interesting character because in a lot of ways he's responsible for a lot of what happens here.
Yeah.
So what do you guys think about his arc and the fact that he does, as Andy says, become more machine than person by the end of it? John, I feel like you have thoughts. You were making faces as I was talking about him.
Well, I will say, I compare this comic to some shows that I really love. And I mentioned Lost already, but I also say this reminds me a ton of the Battlestar Galactica remake, and specifically this character who is the version of Baltar, Gaius Baltar. So Gaius Baltar in the TV series is basically responsible for the Cylons coming back and wiping out and forcing them to go on the run. And he is this schemer and this liar, and he's always out for his own self, and he's completely conflicted because he knows what's right and he knows what's wrong, but he consistently chooses what's wrong anyways. And I think Dr. Kwan reminds me a ton of Gaius. He's not as greasy, but he's right there. And I think it humanizes him to be so flawed. We don't have to like him, but we can completely understand every decision he makes and why he makes it. And I think it makes for a very compelling character. And we are happy to see him not get on the shit, not get away at the end, because we're like, come on, buddy. If anybody doesn't deserve to get out of this, it's you.
But doesn't he? I mean, like, and maybe I'm wrong, but like you see that the attack and that her dad's ship gets wiped out.
Right.
We don't actually see anything happen to her or Kwan necessarily. Like, right. So, and I obviously we know there's a follow up. I don't know if either of those characters appear in the follow up to this, but like, yeah, I don't know. Like, obviously her dad doesn't, and the entire like fleet doesn't make it out of there. Doesn't mean like, I don't know. I took it, the fact that she was yelling for her dad meant that she probably didn't, that they didn't show her get wiped out, that she probably made it. But that's just me. Anything else anybody else got any comments about him before we move on? Andy, you got any thoughts on?
No, John's right, man. It really humanizes him, and you don't have to agree with what he's doing, but you do kind of understand it. I agree with that 100%.
Yeah, there's a lot of push and pull with that character overall. I mean, I can appreciate that. Anytime a writer can make you, look at a guy that in certain times you can't stand because of or you can't trust because of his lies and things like that. But then at the same time, you kind of appreciate certain aspects of it just because he does do the right thing sometimes. As weird as that sounds.
Yeah, it's not like he's not necessarily evil, but he's not. But he is very much out for himself.
Selfish, very selfish.
He's very selfish and very self-centered in his decision making, and it has lots of consequences that affect everybody else, and not in a good way. And so yeah. All right. We get a little bit of John's favorite character in this, and that we get Driller, and he gets
you act like it's not all of our favorite characters. Let's just come on now.
I will say, like, he definitely is like my favorite character. I wish we got a little more of him here. We don't get very much. He does get a little bit of a redemptive moment in this. I mean, he gets there's not really much happens other than basically they station him here for his redemption at the end, which is to save Andy and
Effie.
I was blanking on her name. I was about to call her Elsa, and I was like, that's not right.
I almost said Ellie.
Before he disappears with the rest of the robots, I mean, he gets this opportunity to. They're stuck in space. He realizes senses what's happening to them and actually saves them, and obviously he's the one that killed Andy, is responsible for Andy's mom's death by the choices he made, but he gets the chance to not really make up for it, but to redeem himself a little bit for Andy. So what did you guys think of that moment? Let's start with Justin this time.
I love that moment. I thought that was such a powerful moment, and I think I feel like it's his perfect way to kind of have his story end. In how it all started and his destruction and that he killed people, all the way down to kind of, like you said, redeeming himself in a scene where you really think, like, where's this going? Like, Andy and Effie they're done. They're floating in space. They're saying goodbye. Like, this is that moment now. Cue the music. Like, and then out of nowhere he comes in and saves them. And that being like the last time we see him, and just saying what he said there at the end, just like, that we're even. Like, I don't know. I just thought it was so perfect for his character to end the way that did. And I love that they were able to include that and wrap that up the way it did. Thought it was really good.
But you, John, what about you? What do you? Or actually, I'll let you say you have the last word on Driller. Let's go with Andy next.
Ooh, you can't talk about Driller without giving Bandit 30 seconds first. They brought Bandit full circle, bringing that family unit back together, making that last panel, the panel you have on the thumbnail, even more impactful, therefore almost reuniting the family in this arc, so that when Driller saves Andy, he's not just saving Andy and Effie, he's saving the rest of the family. He's saving and preserving that what's left of Andy and his family for the readers there. So Driller's redemptive arc, as short as it is, becomes that much more impactful, in my opinion. Like, it makes up for how short it really is. And if you don't feel a little tingle in your chest with the end of Driller's arc, you're not human.
Could be a compliment.
Yeah, and that's what it could be. What about you, John?
It's all my favorite artwork in this sequence, and I know we're going to get to Tim and Andy, but the reason the Driller sequence works for me is the goodbye moment, right? Where Tim basically says goodbye to Andy, and they get launched out into space. I love the way Dustin Nguyen does this amazing cosmic stuff. And then if I had to pick just one piece of art, it's probably that one.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, that art is so good there.
And it's a powerful moment where you're like, okay, this might be the end for them, and then to see Driller from afar, looking out, and then just his eyes, and of course it's just like his little
Yeah.
and he's just looking at them, and then he just commits. Like, he doesn't even say what he's going to do. He's just jumping out. And behind him, his buddy is calling him, "What are you doing?" And he's just
crazy power rush.
I think it's just a beautiful moment for him on every level. And he even says, like, "We're even now."
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like a question. It even has a period at the end, right? Driller and Blonde Herman are even now.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a question. And it is like, yeah, okay. Like, Andy doesn't even know how to reply to it. But I got the feeling that Driller was not asking. He was saying, he's like, that's all I got to give you. Like, so there you go. And of course he's gone, and that's the end of,
Well, and I love that when he launches himself out to go get him, he even says it one more time. Driller, a real killer. Driller gonna go get some humans. And and he's making a choice to be different, to Like his whole the whole time it's been Driller a killer, Driller a killer, Driller a real killer, and it's like his last act is to save people.
Yeah,
and
Driller's a savior.
Yeah, and I thought it was just incredibly well done, and I was trying to figure out like why to a certain degree why he was still part of the story, like because it felt like it was him and the old man were a little bit superfluous, that they got captured by the Neshians, they got brought there, and it was like, what? Why would this even happen? Like that to me, that was the one weakest thread of the storyline, is how he got to that position to set that moment up, but it was worth it for that moment. Like,
but I like that he introduced the idea of magic to the world.
Yeah, and obviously that appears to be a big part of what's coming in Ascender.
Right.
But for that, from that standpoint, it probably means more. But in terms of within this storyline, it is kind of an odd little side thing that we get.
Yeah.
In order to get Driller back to this moment where he can make to make this act.
Yeah.
Well, for me, that leaves. I mean, we could talk about other side characters, but that leaves Tim, Andy, Effie, and Bandit, which I wasn't leaving Bandit out. I was including him in the final group here, but so yeah, we get when Telsa takes, after Tim kind of connects to these ancient robots and realizes they're coming. Telsa takes him to her dad's harvester because they need his code to make it work. And we get Andy comes looking for him, and we get as I put it in the thumbnail, and Andy was mad at me because I put it in the thumbnail instead of
Yep. That's tough. That's tough. That's tough because that's the first time these two reunite through the whole series, and it's for a fluttering, brief moment.
Yeah, and you get it. Like the whole sequence is Tim's on the thing.
Well, I mean, going back one page, I would say it's amazing. They used it as like 2 full pages for like 3 panels of them. Like there was no huge dialogue, and there was no. They filled 2 pages of that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And it's perfect. It's so well done.
It's like the whole action of the entire piece, which is just everything's exploding, people dying, all the things happen all over the place, and it's like that slowdown for those. I don't even want to call it a spread page because technically they're all on their own thing, but just.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and you see, like, we've seen Andy this whole time. Oh, sorry, change it back. Struggle with like his feelings about, like, he hates robots. He's hated them, and he's been struggling this whole time. He's been searching with Tim, like not knowing. Like you could tell he doesn't want to destroy Tim, and yet part of him's like he's not sure what he's going to think when he sees it. I don't think like Effie knows what he's going to do. Like she knows him better than he does in terms of what she thinks his reaction is going to be, because he keeps telling him, Tim's your family. You know, and he's like, no, and he's been trying to deny it. And when they see each other, and Tim runs to him, you just see him sort of like. At first, he's like he's still frozen. He doesn't know what to think, and then he sort of just gives in to like how he really feels, and that it is his family, and it's just really well. Those panels are just amazing. So yeah, I saw that picture and I was like, okay, I'm using it. I don't care. And he's still mad at me.
No, I'm just shaking my head at how absolutely stunning that spread is.
Yeah,
just
that's what he said.
Impactful that is. Oh.
JP, you mentioned before about his struggles before we even get to that scene. I wanted to pull this up while people collect themselves. But this is where they're back on the UGC command ship, and this is where they're going back and forth. They're arguing. Sorry, there's like a glare, but and he's, she wants to stay and save Bandit and figure out what's going on. We're taking Bandit, and he wants to move forward. And then she just reminds him of this he just thinks back of this flashback, which I thought was really powerful, of just seeing their memories together. And then just him here in the panel in the corner, just starting to come around to like the idea of it. And then it jumps right into like Blugger. Like we have Blugger now.
Yeah, we didn't really talk about Blugger, but yeah.
But he's like, guys, come on, let's go, let's get out of here. He just wants the robot still, to get paid, basically. And you see that, and that's basically what his character was the whole time. And so then to see him kind of like turn on them and shoot Effie, and so on and so forth. But then Andy comes back and actually tackles, or at least tries to tackle Blugger. At least that's the turn. That was the turn that I really like to see for Andy coming around to saying, okay, yeah, we're gonna get Bandit. We're gonna go see. We're gonna, he becomes that good guy again that he was struggling with trying to get to being that again. So I thought that was great.
Yeah, no, that is an excellent. That's another excellent sequence. And yeah, when he touches, or she's setting, they're trying to get Bandit off the thing, and he projects the memories where like he can see them, and yeah, it just. It's definitely really well done. And yeah, the little final showdown with Blugger and her. Blugger, you make me ashamed to have any flesh left. Yeah. It's also really well done. John, you got anything you want to add to either of those two sequences before we kind of move toward the end of this? Or
no, let's get into the end here.
Okay. So they're reunited. They're trying to sort of escape, and the original harvesters show up, and I love this just because it shows you how like sort of pathetic like his little harvester that he built, which was going to be their ultimate weapon, and then what a real one is like when
for me it's this one when it just reaches down and crushes it.
yeah.
I love it. It's like it sort of looks at it and it's like, what's it doing? It sees its effigy. It sees a false god, and then it just reaches out and crushes it. I love it.
It's like, yeah.
It's just that. Let me show you what a god can really do, and it's just done.
Yeah.
I love that.
Well, then it basically registers and captures Tim, Effie, Bandit, and Andy. And you see like Tim and these original beings having a conversation. And Tim trying to downloading his memories to them and trying to convince them that humanity is worth saving. That it's, yes, they've made mistakes, but they're worth they're worth saving. That they shouldn't. They've come here to destroy them, and they shouldn't. And you feel like that maybe he's
making headway.
And then our Neshians, who sort of really serve I feel are very much throughout this whole thing are very much the most one-dimensional set of characters in this whole story.
Would you say they were very pig-headed?
Yes. That's
terrible.
Very much so, yes. And they basically show up and destroy the hardwire in front of these ancient AI, this ancient AI, and it goes from, we have seen the life like any other. Something is about to, and you feel like they're making, and they go, no more chances, no more reprieves, and they start basically wiping everybody out, and they also start taking the robots, and we get like all the other machines, and we see kind of the that they're going to take Tim and kill Andy and Effie, and we see Tim sort of bargain for their lives, which sets up that moment with Driller. But, Tim chooses here. Let me make this big. But Tim's like, I'll go with you, but save them, which like they totally don't do. They just throw them out into space. Like they kind of tell him that's what they're gonna do, but yeah, they just throw them out into space where Driller comes to the rescue. But otherwise, yeah. So what do you think of that? The whole sequence there, how they lay that out. What do you guys think about that? The whole climax of how Tim sort of fails in terms of trying to convince them, and what happens there.
Well, I mean, it's taken humanity all of these eons and years to get to this point where they've got the Tim series, which is the actual companion, which is what, for all intents and purposes, everything started for. Was we're giving you this knowledge so that you can create companions, you can create equals. And even then, the Tim series was they were babysitters. They were eyed as another physical object to do a job. But then Tim 21 and Tim 22 were really companions with the codex that was used in their builds. So they finally got to this point. And Tim 21 is the last one left to tell the story of what humanity's really like and why it's worth saving. And this is his last ditch effort. Like you said, the Ganetians, however it's pronounced, show up and just obliterate that as we're seeing it happen. And my heart hit the floor when I was like reading through this for the first time. And I'm like, there's a chance here. They're going to win him over. Maybe they're going to give Tim some support and we're going to have this happy ending. And then all of a sudden, wham, no. In the end, I think it delivers a better story the way they went about it. I really like the fact that the Harvester and the original AIs actually took the spaceship that Andy and Tim and Effie and everybody was on and brought it into the Harvester, much like 4,000 years before it happened with the Doctor and his apprentice, or the scientist and his apprentice, almost kind of bringing the story full circle there. So they were giving them an opportunity to kind of state their case or to talk, to meet up. And they really wanted to bring everybody home as far as the robots and Tim. And he had that chance and it kind of got ruined, and I'm kind of spicy for it.
Definitely, John. What do you think about this?
So this is the part where it's hard because there's a ton of loose ends here, and there's obviously a part of you that wants to have a completely wrapped up ending to this, and you want to have conclusions that give you enough about all these characters. And like we're saying, there's plenty of characters who we have no clue what happened to them. Yeah. And they just vanish. What's going on with these characters? There's a lot of questions left. But for me, that's kind of fitting. There's always missing puzzle pieces. Our story, Tim's story, is completed, and all the little side stories get enough of an arc that it doesn't bother me.
Right.
But I do agree that that's the one complaint I've heard a bunch was people were left wanting more. They didn't feel like they got enough answers. And so they felt it was an unfinished ending. For me, it works beautifully. And I think gives us everything we need without giving us a bunch of stuff we didn't necessarily need.
No. Which I think that's an interesting point, because as I was looking, like, just after I got done, I looked up some stuff, and like I was trying to just see where Ascender was at and like how far along it was, like not details, just how far along it was. And I stumbled across a thing that was from Jeff Lemire that he was talking about it, and he felt like he got to the original end of his story, and he felt like, man, there's more I want. That he wanted more. Like he wanted some of those loose ends tied up. And like that's where, as he was writing toward the end, that's where it kind of shifted to set up what becomes Ascender, which I didn't read the part where they started talking about that, but just like it was interesting that you brought that up, that like that was some people's complaint, and in his own mind, that was sort of his complaint with his own story. Like as he felt like, oh, there's some things I need to wrap up, but he made it a separate thing that you don't necessarily need to do. Like that's why he did separate it into a different series and just didn't just keep going with the Cinder. But it's kind of an interesting thing that because I just did read that and it was interesting that was people's complaint, and he got to the end of his story and he was like, he wasn't completely satisfied with where, even though it was where it needed to be. Go ahead, Andy.
So then why is the very beginning of the last issue narrated by the same person that narrates the end of that?
Because he knew before he got to the end.
Before he got to the
As he was approaching the end, he
Okay.
said, like, as I was coming to the end, I realized that there was more that I like, that I didn't necessarily want that to be the end, that there was more that I wanted to tell. And so he started setting it up before he got to the end.
Earlier, okay.
Like, he knew what the end was, and he wasn't completely satisfied with that being the end. So he, like, altered it a little bit to set up being able to tell more. Which is basically that narration. The feeling I got from the little article where he was talking about. Justin, what about you, man? You haven't really said anything about what you think about this ending yet.
So I wanted to show this panel. This is the moment for me that and it's really difficult to see, probably since it's on the iPad. But this is the memories that are being transferred from Tim 21 to the rest of the AI to show his entire life. And for me, this was like that type of moment that the only thing I can really think about it or compare it to is, so I'm a really big Hamilton fan for like the Broadway show.
Yeah.
And I know I've talked with John about it before.
Heck yeah.
There is a part, it's not even a spoiler, but like towards how it ends, there's like these moments of where all the different music that you hear that's in Hamilton is tied into one song. And it brings you back to you almost remember each and every scene of that play throughout its entirety. And I know there's like bands that do this with certain concept albums and things like that as well. But this is what that was to me here, is you get to see, if you have the book and you look at it in person, it's so much more clear. But just to really see all the little moments and memories, special memories of Andy and Tim, the first time they ever meet. You see flashbacks with even when Andy's mom is in the picture still. You see when Telsa is letting Tim go to go join Andy. Like all these little memories of just passion and emotion. And it really just, for me, it just carries you through the entire thing that we just read. And I just thought it was so powerful. That in itself is, and I like when stories do that, or like the play Hamilton has done something like that, where it just brings you back into everything all within one shot or one song or one whatever it is that you're looking at. And that to me was like the home run. And then like to Andy's point, I too was like, he's going to fix everything. Like this is how I could see this beautiful ending of just like, all right, he's going to save everybody. And especially because he was having those dreams, those flashbacks in the beginning of like, you see like Tim leading the way. Like I thought, okay, those dreams are now like coming to reality. He's going to lead the way in bringing harmony to both humans and machine living together. Like that's kind of what I was at that moment anyways, starting to picture as you start to see the, what they call it, the ellipsis, the ... as the AI is like considering, well, wow, we never seen this before, kind of thing. And then of course you get the harvester blowing everything up at the end. But
yeah. And it's just like in the narrator of this talking about, so that's how the universe ends. And like, obviously not everyone dies, because we know that there's this little girl that we see at the end who's clearly Andy and Effie's daughter. But we also get, at the beginning of the first story, you got like these populations of these planets and what the first harvesters did. And Nirada, or the main GNC world, at the beginning of the book, at the beginning of the story, the population's over 5 billion people. And then after the first harvester thing, it's down around to 1 billion. And when this is done, it's 456,000 people. And like, that's kind of the same kind of level all of these drop. Ostraka, which was the original planet that original scientist was from, was down to like 6,000. And what is it? Samson's like 400,000, which was the one that like we see that they're on at the end. Like they literally obliterate like 90% of humans or humanoids or whatever of all the aliens and people. And they don't
95%.
it's just, So yeah, there's definitely no happy ending here.
No, there's a lot of weight to that 2-page spread. There's a lot of weight, especially when you take in the numbers from 10 years before this.
Yeah,
when you were reading that, and then you think about that, and I dug back through the books and looked at
I
it.
would like to see just how much the numbers went down.
Yeah, I didn't crunch numbers, so to speak, but it carries way more weight when you put that back into your mind, and then look back here and you're thinking, wow, they're in the single digit percentage points of population that survived, and that resonates. Wow, it resonates a lot, actually, and brings a lot of weight to the ending that leaves your heart very heavy. So the next page after that, there's a tiny bit of hope.
Yeah, you do get with a little bit, because you get 10 years later, and you get this little girl talking about who told her the story, and then you see her, say dad, and then the finale is you get her and Andy, an older Andy a little bit, but
Oh my God, he's aged a lot for 10 years.
yeah, he looks a little rough, but he definitely looks a little rough for 10 years. Let me go to this one here so I can just show the art, and he's looking up in sort of into outer space, and she's like, "What are you looking at?" And he's like, "Nothing." And
can we talk about this art and how hopeless his face looks in that panel?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that was tough.
Yeah, he looks very hopeless, whereas she, though, does not. Because she's a kid. She's 10 or 9 or whatever.
She's vibrant. She's full of life, and
yeah. I mean, and you can tell, she's narrating this and the way her handwriting is a child's handwriting.
Yeah.
I like that they did that like that. Yeah.
But she does. Andy talked about the weight. She doesn't understand the weight that her dad is clearly carrying of what happened. Andy's clearly carrying around a lot of the weight of all those dead people that we see, those numbers. And she doesn't understand any of that because she never was a part of that world. And so there is a little bit of hope in her, whereas he has none at this point, or doesn't appear to have any.
Well, it's really heartbreaking is you don't see Effie, and there's no
You
talk
don't.
about.
She doesn't say anything about mom. It's clear that Effie's her mom because she looks just like her, but but yeah, there's no discussion of that either.
So that kind of punches me right square in the face with heaviness, and makes that the artist's rendition of Andy's face there even more heavy. So he doesn't have Tim, he doesn't have Effie, he has essentially lost almost everything.
Yeah.
So I will say I started my Descender journey with Ascender 1. It was a book club pick by Alec. I don't know what it was, a year ago or whatever. Alec was like, "Oh yeah, I love Descender. We should read Descender 1." And I was like, "All right, fine." I said, "I've never read Descender," and he was like, "No, you can totally follow it. It's not like any kind of a thing." So I read it. I thought it was great. I loved the art, but my instant response was, "I want to know the backstory. I'm not going to want to read this out of order." And he was like, "Yeah, you can totally enjoy it out of order." And I just was like flat refused. I went and bought the first 2 trades, loved them, bought all the trades, and then devoured them pretty quickly, and then reread them again, and then now a third time with you guys. So I went in knowing a little bit of how this was going to play out, although I will also say, Ascender did not do it did not work to try to connect. It was not trying to be this is the next piece, and no, it was not. It was definitely this is our story. It's not necessarily a sequel. It's just another story. And in that way, I haven't read beyond issue 1, but from what I got, what I got at issue 1 was really just one true Descender moment, but the rest of it was a whole new kind of thing.
Oh no!
Now, I promise you it'll be your favorite moment. It's now my favorite moment in that issue, and I'm
Okay.
looking forward to reading it again and being like, whoa, that's such a cool Descender moment that they earned the moment because of 6 trades worth of this.
Exact same creative team, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
But it's not like a linear sequel. This isn't like New Hope and Empire Strikes Back and now like it's not like that at all.
Yeah. Could you imagine it couldn't be a different creative team. You couldn't change the artist on this. It would not. I don't care if it is its own story. If it's in this universe, it
has to be these 2 guys. Absolutely.
Well, I'm excited for it.
Well, yeah, I told you guys before we went live. I've already ordered the first 2 trades. I think there's 3 trades out, plus maybe a couple of issues beyond that or something. But
the 3rd trade like just came out recently.
Okay, so yeah, if you guys want to come back and do a Cinder here in a little bit, I think I would be up for that. So you guys are all welcome to continue this journey.
Well, I'm excited to be in the seat of I've never read what we're gonna read. Like,
so I tell you, it's a lot of fun to read. For me, it's always fun to have somebody who has read it and people who haven't. But this will be a blast to all just.
I was gonna say for all of us, this is gonna be first time, right? Because Andy, you haven't dived, so this is first time for all of us.
I had the same kind of thought as you, but I had that thought as I saw issue 1 on the shelf, and I'm like, nope. I understood that it was a tie-in, or I understood that I needed to read Descender first. Really,
no.
At least I was told that.
Well, I'm down.
Thanks.
Oh yeah, you know I'm down. I'm just busy looking for Dustin's art right now.
Buying some OA.
There is none. There's none. It's all sold.
I will say he's done like I want to say Batman variants and stuff.
Yeah, he's done variants. I actually have a variant coming out pretty soon that I got that was his, and I was like, oh, and I ordered it just because it was his.
Did you see the Teen Titans?
The Teen Titans variant. I haven't picked it up, but yeah, it's the Teen Titans.
Kelsey's on the front cover. Kelsey's on the cover.
And I think the very first time we did one of these, I showed you my all-time favorite Descender variant.
Yeah, show it again.
It's in the back of this book. It's
where
the wild things are. Come on.
Oh yeah. There's some really cool ones in the back of this. Like
that's freaking amazing. You got Tim as the little boy, and you got Driller as the wild thing, and then Bandit in the front. I freaking love this.
Who does he do those as well? Those variants?
He does some of the variants. I think that's a Nguyen. I think that's his.
Yeah, like a lot of them look like kind of like kid versions.
Yeah.
Of the characters, and they're really well done, but they still like look like his art really well. So I was just curious if he was actually doing all.
He didn't do all of them. Like some, I can definitely see like other artists on a few of these, but he does some of them for sure. I recognize his signature on a few. So his signature is the long scrawl. If you want to, like, it's right.
Oh, okay.
It's right there on the side of the first variant.
Well, at least those 3. I think he does all of these. His scrawl is on all of these. All these beat covers showing in the back of this one, at least.
Yeah, that does look like it. You're right. So there you go.
So very cool.
Yeah.
Great.
So final thoughts on Descender. Andy's shaking his head. Does that mean you don't want to go first?
It's one of those stories that can't just simply be put into a quick sentence or two.
Yeah.
And it's up there with Saga for me. If I had to put a grade on it, I'm giving it a 9.9. A solid 9.9.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, so it's like almost a Saga level for you. We all know that you love Saga. So are you going to
We all know this.
Yeah, well, I'm curious. We saw Justin show off his 9.8 number 1. Are you going to start trying to go back and collect these?
So the one that he had purchased, if it's the one I'm thinking of, it was at auction, and I know what it ended for, and I was considering making a run on it, and I decided not to just in that moment because I was busy at work trying to do 10 other things, and I'm like, you know what? There will always be another one available at some point.
Yeah,
I've actually already hit like save on a couple other auctions that I'm paying attention to, because that's a 9. I don't think I'll be a completionist collector, but I definitely need at least a cover A in my collection.
I would, I don't know. Like, I've went back and forth because I haven't pulled the trigger on any of the East of West either. But the way I see myself, because for me, this and East of West are like, in terms of the favorite, like, of indies that I've read so far. But I see myself getting a number 1 at some point, and there's a few covers scattered throughout here that I would probably also try to track down. I don't see myself trying to get the whole run necessarily, but I'm pretty similar that I'll probably at least get a number 1, and then maybe a few of these covers that I just absolutely love, but we'll see how far I go. Justin, what about you? Final thoughts on Descender?
I think I'm kind of there with Andy with putting us up there as high as he's putting it in terms of the number he gave it. And I don't talk about it a lot, but I really love Saga 2, at least from what I've read. And I own a Saga 1. Like, I went out of my way. I feel like this is the next, at least for indie stuff, like this is the next series where I just wanted to go out of my way to own the, issue number 1. And looking at these covers, I might dive into buying each of these issues individually. I also want the hardcover, which I love, the one that Alec has showed when he was on the first episode with us. That was beautiful.
Yeah, well, I have ordered the volume 1 hardcover. The volume 2 is impossible.
That's right, you were saying that. Yeah, it's hard, huh?
It's very hard to find.
Oh, the volume, because there's 2, volume 1 and volume 2 of Descender, right?
Yeah.
I'm on a website where I found some volume 2s available. I'll send you the link. Volume 1 is sold out, but volume 2 is signed and personalized for what I would consider an affordable rate.
Wow. I have not been able to find a volume 2. Even the one, there's only like a couple even on eBay, and they're like $100+ for volume 2.
I am putting it in the chat right now for you guys.
The private, nice. Okay, I will go check that out.
And the only reason why I'm not adding this to my cart right now is being a completionist. I don't want to buy number 2 if I can't put number 1 in the cart.
Number 1 is on Amazon. You can get number 1 off Amazon for a cover price.
Yeah.
So JP better buy before Andy.
No, I can wait. There's always
I
more.
already bought a volume 1. Yeah, they're available right now on Amazon. They're not sold out. Volume 2 has been sold out everywhere I've looked. So as soon as we get done with this, I'll look. But
I'm surprised that issue 1, like cover A issue 1, is not more.
Yeah.
It's so affordable now. So I think I paid like $65 no shipping or free shipping or something with mine when it finished. Andy, was that the one that you caught? It was 60.
Yeah, I think that's where it landed. The one I was watching 3 days before it ended was at like 30. So you guys must have finished out at about $60. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and even that, I had the bid like 85. I was like, I'm paying whatever for this thing. I'm just gonna get it. And they were all going for $50 to $60 or whatever.
Yeah.
So there was no shipping, there was free shipping, so $65, basically $50. But I'm like, for the story, for what this is and how powerful it is and how much I loved it, I can't believe it's not more popular. I can't believe it's not on that Saga level. I'm really surprised. I mean, I would say, if you were thinking about getting it, definitely get it now. I mean, it's a great time to do it. It's great.
If I ever run into him at a convention, that I've got a sketchbook that I've never started, and I should have. Seawater talked me into it, and I forgot all about it, and I should have. If I ever run into him at a convention or find a convention where he's going to be at, I will fight to try to come up with the times to get that done, because it'll be one of those, here, sir, here's my book. Anything from Descender that you want to do, please.
Yeah. John, we haven't got to you yet. Final thoughts? Now, you have said pretty brave reviews about this. So we want to tell the people in the chat where you went
My hottest of hot takes. No, I obviously it's been since I've come back into collecting in the early 2000s or whatever. I've been into indies far more than most other things, and I would happily say Descender is my favorite indie comic. It's no shame on Saga or Y the Last Man or 100 other really great stories that I love, because those are all 9-8 white page stories. But this is a 10 for me. I mean, maybe a 9-9 if I'm in a bad mood one day. It's absolutely exceptional, and there's nothing to hate on it. Now, I will say I can speak to why it's not a higher valued book. I think it was divisive. I think Dustin Nguyen was divisive. His art was divisive. I know people that tell me that the art turned them off, and I don't get it. And I want to shake sense into them, like a moment from Airplane where it's like everybody lines up and slaps them, and then somebody's got the billy club. And but I get it. I guess that's just I like Trad Moore too. I can enjoy Trad Moore and be like, whatever. It's crazy for me.
I mean, I guess because it's watercolor, it's different, but like to me, it's not that different. I don't know.
And then the other mark against it is the lack of spec. Like there's nobody's talking about a TV series or a movie or anything. Nobody's talking about it. Even Ascender. Nobody's talking. I mean, how many times on YouTube have you heard somebody when their pull list is up talking about, I picked up the new issue of Ascender,
which is shocking. Shocking.
Just crickets.
Wow.
You know, which is at least within our community telling in some way. Now, I would legitimately have kept up with Ascender if I hadn't read it the way I did, and now I want to read individual issues. I just want to read the trades. Like I just want to read. I don't want to be stuck with one issue and be like, God damn it, I want to read 5 or 6 at a go now. So even though my shop had a $1 shelf book sale, and I could have bought like 8 issues of Ascender. They had all of them, and I was like, I had them in my hands, and I'm like, I want to freaking read a trade. Like I want the trade. So I put them all back, and I went and I bought the trades that I was missing.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, like it's one of the things that I've talked about this is I don't buy a lot of indie. I don't buy indies for the most part off the rack. The only indie I'm buying right now is Die. And part of it is because I'm so late to coming to indies. Like this show was really about me like finally like pulling the trigger and reading some of this stuff. Is I love reading them as trades. I love being able to get a big chunk of the story at a time, and like and I've always been like a book I have a ton of books in my house. I don't read as many books as I used to because I read more comics and stuff. But I just in a lot of ways I prefer trades to floppies for reading. And if I'm not collecting it specifically, this is how I want to read it. For me. I didn't give my final rankings yet on Descender. Like I said, like it and East of West are definitely the 2 favorite indies that I've exposed myself to so far. I don't know that I would go 10, like 9 point. I don't know that I would do it like the 9. I guess if we're doing CGC, 9.9 is probably we'll do that. 9.9. I don't think it's perfect, but it's close. And I love it. And the fact that Andy's got me a chance to get the hardcover for Volume 2 is I'm like, yes.
The only reason why I haven't bought one yet is I want to make sure you get one first.
Well, as soon as we get off here, I will probably pull the trigger. But yeah, so because I already have Volume 1 headed this way, and which means I didn't give it away the other night, but I will probably be finding someone to send my trades off to to pass the story along.
Awesome.
I like that.
So at some point, but
good idea.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I really enjoyed this. I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me. I'm looking forward to doing Ascender with you guys. And yeah, you guys have anything you want to pitch before we get out of here real quick? Andy, you got anything coming up?
Oh man, always. I've got some great ideas in the loop. I'm trying to capitalize on them to come up with something fun. Check out my channel for a 2021 hunt list, a 2021 goals list coming up here soon. Just did the live giveaway last night, actually, which was amazing, and I couldn't believe the support and the outpour of people that came through and had fun with that, and I greatly appreciate it. Other than that, you guys can find me on Muddy Knight's Modern Men. We're reading some awesome fun reads just like this here. you guys can find me here on JP's channel. You can occasionally find me on John's channel, and hopefully here soon you'll see me on Justin's channel for one of his spotlights as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Johnny, what do you got coming up? I know you're never on YouTube, so
Yeah, it's a slower week for me. I'm only doing like 6 shows this week. Obviously, we were just on Justin's channel talking about issue 111 of the Uncanny X-Men, or All New, All Different X-Men. Great issue, great chat. Chet I. Knight was there. It was a lot of fun.
Mhm.
A few hours ago, I dropped a slightly longer video edited for me, about 18 minutes long, of my girls and I fully spoiler breaking down WandaVision, the first 2 episodes.
I need to read that.
I was blown away. I just turned the camera on. We had not really talked about it after watching it, and then I just asked them a bunch of questions. They know comics. I'm so proud. It was like such a proud dad moment.
That's
like
awesome.
They were pulling references of stuff, naming off characters of things, and I just was like geeking on it. So that was a lot of fun. If you guys if you didn't understand WandaVision or were confused about WandaVision, I'm happy to have my girls break it down for you. And then my pull list video drops Thursday. Book club might be skipping this week. I'm supposed to do a Zoom meeting with my dad at that time, so it might conflict. I just found out a little bit ago. Yeah. And then next Monday, this coming Monday, we've got Comic Gories. So I'm hanging out with JP. We're going to be doing another round of Comic Gories. We're seeing if Super Russ can win a 9/8 white pages slab.
Nice.
Does Super Russ have the staying power? He had never really won one of these shows before. Now he's won 2 in a row. He's going for a 3-peat, but he's going to have to get through some serious champs like Alex the Comic Hoarder. That dude throws some fire.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Oh, jeez.
You can't. I had to at least put somebody serious in the ring there. So
Neither of these 2 guys have competed yet.
This is true, and I need to make arrangements for that coming up.
We need to get them on. We need to get them on the list.
I'm terrified.
It's a blast. It's nerve-wracking, but it's a blast. It's so much.
Don't ask Kyalea.
Yeah.
I'm terrified because I'm like a pigeonhole collector where I collect a couple of things. So when you guys throw all these different variations in there, I'm like, this is way more difficult.
You can find something.
Mighty Morphin Power Rangers covered. Go.
Well, usually there's not many of those. Like,
actually, I got 3 messages today because 2 or 3 of the 4 guys are like, I really only collect DC. And I was like,
so Marvel, they said
you better buckle up for all those Deadpool covers, buddy.
Told me that.
It's gonna be Deadpool all night.
Justin, what about you? What you got coming up?
My main shows on the X-Men with John, as you just mentioned. Having a lot of fun with that every Tuesday, going back and forth on our channels. And this Saturday, I have my Comic Collector Origins show, and I'm going to have Rod, Just a Rican and his comics, as my guest. So really excited to have Rod on. It's the first time that he and I will be collaborating on something. So that'll be at 2:00 Eastern time on my channel. And just looking forward to more of this. You guys are awesome. I love this group that we have. I talked to my girlfriend about this and just tell her how much fun I have with just breaking down these Descender issues. So thank you all for having me on and just being part of it.
Yeah,
well, hey man, it's a Tuesday where I get to talk about my favorite superhero comics and then my favorite independent comics.
Right. The win-win. Yeah.
Well, so I got a bunch of indie shows coming up. Hopefully Saturday, finally, we're going to do volumes 7 through 9 of Saga. Do the wrap up of the current run of Saga. Well, actually, we're doing it Saturday, even if not everybody on my original panel can make it, because we got to fill in if we need one. So,
what time were you going on again?
I would have to look either 8 or 9 Central, so 9 or 10 Eastern.
Just shoot me the link.
Okay. So
you don't need to close that.
And then so that's Saturday. Next Tuesday, we are volumes 4 and 5 of Monstrous. So we will be caught up to where Monstrous is in terms of at least the release. That was supposed to be. Both of these are rescheduled because things had come up for people, which happens. So we're going to be talking about this. This is another one I've really enjoyed. The art, it's a very different style of art, but the art on this thing is just so ridiculous. It's just so.
And when is that show?
Next Tuesday.
Man, I don't know if I think I'm like 3 trades behind you, so I don't know that I can catch up by then.
Well, you'll just have to, because we're on volumes 4 and 5, so we're right at the end of where we'll be completely caught up to what's.
I think I have all the volumes. I just have only read the first 2, so I'm like way behind.
And then a week from Friday, we'll be doing, which was originally what was scheduled for next week before I had to reschedule Monsters. Nice. We're doing Wicked and Divine volumes 4 and 5. So I got a bunch of stuff that I've been reading coming up. So we'll be talking about that. Obviously, I have my Saturday, the Look Back show. So I want to thank everybody for hanging out. I know a lot of people bailed on us because they were like, we haven't read the finale yet. And I understand. Hopefully they'll watch it later. I want to thank you guys. I look forward to starting Ascender with you guys sometime in the not too distant future. So, all right, Let's get out of here. Later, everyone. Thanks again.